Sound of Metal follows Ruben, a heavy metal drummer whose life is upended when he suddenly loses his hearing. As he struggles to accept his new reality, he enters a deaf community where he's forced to confront his fears of silence and loss. The film explores his journey through the 5 stages of grief: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance, as he finally embraces stillness. Sound of Metal isn't just about losing sound, it's about the grieving process of losing an identity and the transformative power of surrender. To fully understand Ruben's emotional arc, let's break down how each stage of grief unfolds throughout the film. After the previous clips of Ruben's opening drumming performance, we are greeted into his world with a simple morning routine, with the focus of the sounds of each mundane step. He is then confronted with ringing sounds shortly after, a harsh, piercing noise that signals something is wrong. The next morning, there is an absence of sound. As an audience, we share Ruben's perspective. We no longer hear the steps of his morning routine. Ruben's world, once full of sound, is now silent. During this moment in the film, we're introduced to a new version of Ruben's hearing, one that is dim and drained. The sound is distant, hollow, almost submerged. The film assumes its audience is hearing and can recognize the stark difference between the full sound and the absence of it. In the scene at the doctor's office, we experience this shift firsthand, moving in and out of Ruben's head, caught between his new reality and what once was.
Search.
Throat.
Ditch.
Fish.
Talk.
Ruben and his partner Lou are forced to communicate through scribbled words on a placemat, a simple yet powerful sign of lost connection. The ease of conversation is gone, replaced by silence and written words. But Ruben refuses to stop the tour, clinging to the life he knows. He's in denial of his deafness, unwilling to accept the change. To cope, he falls back on old habits as a former addict, seeking control in a situation that feels entirely out of his hands. Because of this, Lou takes Ruben to a secluded deaf community, a space built for those navigating life without sound. It's here that Ruben meets Joe, the leader of the community, a man who understands the weight of Ruben's struggle. This sparks the beginning of a new chapter, one that challenges Ruben to confront his reality rather than run away from it. The next morning, Lou is jolted awake by the sound of Ruben crashing instruments and destroying things in the RV. Overwhelmed with frustration, he lashes out, unable to process the reality of his situation. His world has changed overnight, and in his anger, he tries to fight against the only way he knows how, through noise and chaos. He then bargains with Lou, desperately promising to stay at the deaf community, to learn, to heal, anything to keep her from leaving. It's a last attempt to hold on to the life they had, even as it slips further away. At the deaf community, Ruben experiences what's known as reverse dining table syndrome, a feeling of isolation where everyone around him can communicate except for him. Typically, it's the other way around, with deaf individuals being the ones excluded in a hearing space. But here, Ruben is the outsider. At first, he resists learning sign language, believing he's different, that he doesn't truly belong. Over time, that resistance softens. As he works with the kids in the community, he slowly begins to accept his new reality. In one pivotal scene, he sits on a metal slide with a young boy. The child taps on the slide, feeling the vibrations, experiencing sound in a completely new way. To them, the vibrations mimic the rhythm of a drum, a connection to Ruben's past. But when we step back, we hear the sounds as soft, distant padding. Ruben's world of sound has shifted entirely, no longer defined by hearing, but by feeling. Desperate to reclaim his old life, Ruben eventually sells the RV, using the money to pay for an intercochlear implant procedure. The second bargain is his final attempt to restore what was once lost, believing that if he can hear again, everything will fall back into place. In a quiet yet symbolic moment, he shaves off his bleached hair, a physical shedding of his past self. The identity he once clung to, the life of a touring drummer, begins to fade. But while Ruben hopes the procedure will bring him back to who he once was, the reality of what's to come is far more complicated. We are introduced to a new sound perspective, Ruben's cochlear implants. The world around him sounds unfamiliar, unnatural, unwarped, and almost mechanical. Every noise is stripped of its depth, replaced with a brittle, wiry distortion. Imposing a deep sense of discomfort, it is clear that this is not the cure that Ruben had envisioned.
Oh, that's bad. Get home.
Hoping to reconnect, he travels back to Lou. When he sees her, he sings with her father in French. Unlike in the beginning of the film, when her voice was raw, projected, and distorted, she now sings in a delicate, poised manner. Yet through Ruben's implants, her voice still sounds the same as before, metallic, distant, and stripped of warmth. In this moment, Ruben fully realizes the irreversible shift in his world.
Tu souris et moi je pleure.
Ruben and Lou quietly come to the realization that they no longer fit together. As he walks away, we step back into his world, experiencing sound just as he does, warped, overstimulating, and uncomfortable. Everyday noises feel overwhelming, a constant reminder that what he fought so hard to regain isn't what he expected. In the final scene, Ruben takes off his hearing aids and sits in complete silence. Visually, this moment feels striking. The film, once dark and desaturated in the beginning, is now bright and full of natural light. For the first time, Ruben isn't resisting or running. He's still. He's present. He's not just accepting his deafness. He's choosing it.